In the next few minutes, we're going to take a look at the variables of obedience. There are three factors that can affect the likelihood of a person being obedient to authority. And these are proximity, location, and uniforms. Situational factors refer to external explanation of obedient behavior. There are three main things about the environment that can make obedience likely, and those are proximity, location, and the power of uniforms. How physically close individuals are to the consequences of their actions affects how much they feel compelled to follow orders. Being further away from the consequences of our actions leads to greater levels of obedience. Milgram found that when the teacher and the learner were in the same room, and the teacher could see the learner's distress, obedience levels dropped to 40%. When the teacher was instructed to take the hand of the learner and place it on a metal plate to receive a shock, obedience levels dropped to 30%. Just as an individual can be seen as an authority figure, places or locations can also be seen as more or less authoritative. Locations such as prestigious universities or government buildings add to the legitimacy of the authority figure. Obedience rates are higher in institutional settings and are deemed to have legitimacy all of their own. When Milgram carried out his study at the prestigious Yale University, obedience levels were higher than when he moved the experiment to an office block in a rundown part of town. Uniforms, such as those worn by police officers or military personnel, add further legitimacy to an authority figure. Milgram made sure that the researcher in his study was dressed in a lab coat. So this is like a uniform. Bickman also carried out a study where ordinary people were told to pick up litter on a New York street, loan a coin to a stranger, or move away from a bus. Only 14% of people obeyed an individual dressed as a milkman, while 38% obeyed a person wearing a security guard's uniform. So people wearing a uniform were seen as more authoritative. Well, so those were some situational factors that I talked about which affect obedience. Now we're going to take a look at some of the dispositional variables. So situational variables involve the environment, but dispositional variables refer to aspects of the individual that might make them more likely to obey. These factors might include our personality. Adorno, who is a sociologist or psychologist, proposed the idea of an authoritarian personality. Our personality stems from early childhood experiences and influences, especially our parents. So children raised in strict households are thought to be more likely to develop an authoritarian personality type than others. People scoring higher on tests of authoritarian personality display higher levels of obedience to authority and higher levels of discipline. Adorno designed a test called the F scale, where F stood for fascist, that could measure levels of authoritarian personality. Elms and Milgrams, in a study in 1966, found a correlation between personality type and authoritarian personality using Milgram's famous procedure. Because Elms and Milgram conducted a correlational study, we cannot be sure that personality type was the cause of the high levels of obedience. So correlation does not necessarily mean causation. The F-scale questionnaire can be easily manipulated. This means that participants might have been able to second-guess the questions. The F-scale also correlates with education levels, which provides a possible alternative explanation. So the issues with the F-scale were that it was easily manipulated and people could second-guess the questions. Correlation does not mean causation, and if there was a correlation between education levels and the scale, so it might have little to do with authority. And that pretty much sums up the variables that affect obedience. So you've got the situational variables and the dispositional variables.